Hello again. The King of the 90s is a story about Danny Kahneman. Danny Kahneman was a movie star in the 1990s. He played in movies, TV shows like NYPD Blue, Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, Friends, Buffy the Vampire Slayer. But he also done movies. And mostly did movies for Miramax Films. And he played in movies, he was in little extra roles in Mallrats, Kevin Smith movies in the 90s. But he has his own movies called Ridiculous Thoughts, Horror Hotel, and also Uncensored. He did all these movies for Miramax, and he always wanted to be a big blockbuster star, but he could never get past that point. You know, everybody saw him as the indie guy. So they dubbed him the Miramax Prince. He dated a lot of stars in the '90s. He had a relationship with Alyssa Milano, had a relationship with Rose McGowan, Neve Campbell, Alastair Morissette, Courtney Love, and he lived during that time. Mostly his acting roles started in the '80s when he played on TV series and stuff like that. But he ended up going through all these things, and the story really is about him being connected to Kurt Cobain and River Phoenix and all that. He lived during that time. He partied at the Viper's Room. He hanged around Lady Calafio, Mickey Rourke, all these characters. And he lived throughout these days. And he could have been a statistic. He could have committed suicide just like most people. He had a drug overdose. But the story is, he goes through the 90s. But he disappears in the 2000s. And somehow he resurfaces to start do a comeback. But the story's not just about Danny Kahneman. It's really about this guy named Deputy, who was like the drug dealer's for stars. He was many of the deaths of the suicides, heroin overdoses, all that is because of Deputy. And you guys read about Deputy involvement in the most disturbing things that ever happened during that time, and he was involved in all of it. And he is a friend of Danny, and Danny falls in love with Deputy's sister, Christina, who is like a pop star. She's like how Beyonce is. She's big time. She has records all over the place. But King of the 90s is not just about this one guy. It's about multiple people during this time. And there's also a shout out to the 90s, which was the best decade that I know of. I grew up during the 90s. I was born in the 80s, but grew up in the 90s. And I enjoyed all the TV shows, the music, the alternative rock was the shit, the rap was the shit. Everything was great at that time. And people have forgotten all about the 90s and forgot about all the stuff that happened during the 90s. Now, in this book, I could have went a little bit more in the 90s. I could have had a little bit more stuff going on in there. A little bit more drinking SEMAs and, a lot more partying in the book. But this book is it's like a tale of a tale. It's like everybody's talking about what happened during the 90s, what happened at that time. And then also the movies that Danny done, like the movies of Ridiculous Thoughts and stuff like that. And people may want to say, hey, the stuff that I put in this story, they can be their own little franchises and movies, because the way I wrote it was half the movies in this story. Because I always wanted to know, if you could go back in time with all the stuff in your mind and relive the 90s. But actually, it's not the story, just talking. Like this guy, Danny, he wanted to be in Terminator 2. The John Connor in Terminator 2, which Edward Furlong got. But this guy right here wanted it. He was gonna get the role. He was a shoo-in for it. But then night he got drunk, he got high, he did some stuff, and when he showed up at the thing, they gave it Edward Furlong. But that's not real life stuff. This story is not true story. It's a fictional story about this guy. This guy is completely fiction. It's not a true guy. This is a guy I created myself. But I use people that you like around him. And that's the idea. He had to make the fictional movies that he played in. It is fictional movies that I made was stuff I watched when I was a kid. Mostly Danny Come is a dream I had, and plus I created Danny Come so many times on wrestling and on WWE and UFC. I like the name Danny Come. And I made a UFC wrestler, Madden football with Danny Come. So this is a character I created myself, and everything in the story, the movies that he made were dreams I had. With the music, like Cranberries and Nirvana, and you're gonna love this story. I mean, if you just sit back and just read it and understand it and just think about it, this guy wrote something about the '90s. He wrote a little about the Viper Room. He wrote about this and that. And if you like this story, maybe I'll do another one. Maybe I'll do another story about the '90s or something. I hope you like it. I hope everybody in the community loves it. And give me some reviews on it. Tell me what you didn't like or didn't like, so I can become a better writer and try to do more. And I want to know more. I want to know what can I do more to make a better story. And I hope you enjoy my other submissions on there about the Sledgehammer. If you like the Sledgehammer, I already written the Sledgehammer Good versus Evil, and I already written that already. And I also, if you like the Ballad of Mayhem, you'll maybe inspire me to make part 2 of Ballad of Mayhem. So I hope you enjoy the King of the '90s, and I hope you enjoy it. I'm also enjoying reading your guys' stuff because your books are inspiring me to write more. Thank you very much, and you have a pleasant day. Happy holidays.